Welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council. It is November 19th, and Councilman Shacklett has our prayer and our pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to invite a special guest to be with us tonight to do our prayer. Alan, would you come to the podium? Alan Farley, I think everybody in the community knows Alan, but I just was thinking, this last year's been a challenge for all of us in a variety of different ways, but certainly the election that we had and the effort that was put forth in our county to address all the nuances of this particular season and deal with the volume and everything. They just did a remarkable job. So I thought we'd ask Alan to come and give us a little update as to that process, and certainly to say thank you to his staff and all those people that work with him and Alan for his leadership in conducting the election this last year. So Alan, if you'll give us a little update. And
thank you. Just to, briefly, we had over 400 poll workers who worked during some very unusual times, and so we voted 144,000 and 677 voters, but a 74% turnout, which is a record. The unique thing about that is 83.8% of our vote happened during early voting, so which is phenomenal. And so everybody took advantage of that. So really, we had a great team of folks, people who, some of our more senior poll officials didn't work because of the pandemic, and we had some people who really stepped up. We also have some folks in our community that had never been a poll worker before and stepped forward, and so now I think we've got a broader pool. But yeah, I'm just blown away by the volume. And just by the patience that everyone showed. We couldn't expand, add more people because the space was limited, but people, some people thought they were going to be in line for an hour, and it was 20, 30 minutes. So everybody was very patient. We got everybody through. So very pleased with the outcome. Thank you very much.
If you'll offer our opening prayer.
You'll bow your heads and let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to thank you for the many blessings that you bestow in our wonderful city and county. We are grateful for the community that we have opportunities to live, raise our families, and work in this great city. I ask for you to watch over the residents of our city that are in need, that are suffering from COVID or mental illness, and provide comfort and safety to their families and all of our families. I also ask that you give our elected leaders at the national, state, and local levels the wisdom, courage, and strength to do what is right and just. I pray that we remain one nation under God. In the name of your Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alan, thank you. Y'all did a great job. All right, let's move to the consent agenda. You have 4 items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion second. Ms. Brown, if you'll call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Do need to caveat, I apologize I didn't say this, but pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order 54, we do have Ms. Scales Harris, who is participating in our meeting virtually. So, Ms. Scales Harris, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we'll move into old business. We have ordinance 20042, amendment to the fiscal year 21 general fund budget, second and final reading.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move into land use matters. We have a zoning of approximately 2.12 acres located along Veterans Parkway north of Franklin Road, and this is our second and final reading.
Mayor McFarland, I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that at the last meeting, there was some discussion about restrictive covenants, use restrictions on the property. Staff, after that meeting, contacted the applicant, and the applicant has voluntarily restricted some uses from potentially going on that property. Recorded it this afternoon. I put a copy of those use restrictions at your desks. Be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him.
Council members, you have the declaration of restricted covenants that they were recorded 11/19/2020, so today, and this is ordinance 20 OZ 35.
I move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move to item 7, amendment of the Laurelstone PRD on approximately 46.5 acres located west of Las Casas Pike and north of DeJarnette Lane. And this is second and final reading for ordinance 20 OZ 36.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move into ordinance 20 OZ 37 to rezone approximately 20.2 acres located along Beasy Road and Warrior Drive.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Teresa Stevens, the Sign Administrator for the City of Murfreesboro. You may recall that last meeting on the 1st, we had the first reading of City Council on November 5th for the item before you. Costco is the applicant. In order to meet notice requirements, the City Council public hearing was not held and will be held tonight during the second reading. The property is located at 1512, 1524, and 1536 Beasy Road along Warrior Drive and Beasy Road. The property consists of 20.2 acres and is zoned light industrial. The property does meet the requirements of a planned sign overlay district. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Eric Braun and Steve Warfield with Costco are joining us via Zoom to discuss the PSO and answer questions as well, after which a public hearing is scheduled.
Okay. Any questions? All right, we need to have a public hearing for this sign overlay. Anyone wishing to speak for any of our public hearings, if you'll come to the podium, if you'll state your name, your address, if you'll keep all comments directed to the council, we'll get those answered at the end of the public hearing. If you are speaking on behalf of an individual, it's 3 minutes. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, you'll have 5 minutes. All right, anyone wishing to speak for or against this planned sign overlay, please come to the podium.
My name is John Harney. I live at 6748 West Gum Road, and I'm here on behalf of the West Point development where Costco is being located, and we just want to say we're in favor of the PSO and support it.
Thank you, Mr. Harney.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, this is Eric Brown with Costco.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that I apologize for not being able to be at the hearing in person, but we appreciate all the help we've received from the city and hope to get approval tonight.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll now consider on second reading ordinance 20 OZ 37.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we look forward to having y'all in the community. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to new business. We have land use matters. The first item we have is to amend the St. Thomas plan sign overlay on approximately 70.7 acres located along Medical Center Parkway, North Thompson Lane, and Gateway Boulevard.
Good evening again, Mayor. Today we're looking at an application to amend the existing planned sign overlay for St. Thomas Rutherford. The zoning ordinance allows a planned sign overlay district to be eligible for a planned sign overlay. The development must consist of 20 acres or more and be zoned appropriately. The property has met and continues to meet these requirements. The subject property is located at 1700 Medical Center Parkway and is approximately 70.71 acres along North Thompson Lane, Medical Center Parkway, and Gateway Boulevard. The property is zoned light industrial and is within the GDO 3 overlay. In 2008, the hospital received approval for the planned sign overlay. Anytime there is a request for a change in existing PSO, an amendment to the PSO is required. Amending the PSO must be approved by the Planning Commission as well as City Council. In addition, this property is located within the GDO 3 overlay and must receive approval from the Design Review Committee. The proposed changes to the PSO were approved by the DRC on August the 4th at their regular scheduled meeting. The hospital is requesting the amendment for rebranding of the hospital from St. Thomas Rutherford to Ascension St. Thomas. The amendment to the PSO will allow clear identification and traffic flow to emergency room, hospital, and medical offices on this large atypical development. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter and then voted to recommend approval on October 7th, during its regularly scheduled meeting. Applicant and Ascension St. Thomas Representative Denise Simmons with AGI is here with a small presentation and available to answer any questions as well. A public hearing is scheduled after the presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Denise Simmons, and I am with AGI Sign, and we are working with Ascension St. Thomas Rutherford Hospital to complete their sign conversion. We will be updating the channel letter sets on the main building to bronze halos, backlit letters, as well as the DePaul and Seton building. I'm sorry. I always forget to click. We will be updating the plate letters at the 8 entrance monuments to this property. We will also be replacing the stone for those monuments, and we will be updating the Ascension Trinity on the building, removing the cross and putting their Trinity, and then refacing existing ground signs. There's approximately 34 ground signs on property. They're wayfinding signs, and we will be updating that signage as well as retrofitting to LEDs. I do have a couple of pictures. I hope I can get to them of those signs. There we go. This is the DePaul channel letter set as it stands now. We will be adding the Ascension Trinity bronze Trinity Ascension logo, as well as enlarging the DePaul sign. They've had questions about the signage not being able to see it. It will be bronze halo lit. This is what the current front main entrance channel letter set reflects, and this is what we will be going with, is the Ascension St. Thomas. And then there will be a large Trinity logo and monument in their memorial garden. And then we have the Seton as it stands now, and we will be removing that and enlarging it to say Seton. And then over here, there would be an Ascension channel letter set. For the Trinity, this is on the back side of the property. This is the cross. We'll be relocating that to the new side of the building. And then on the other side of the property, on the new side, we will also be removing the cross and adding the Ascension Trinity. These are the monuments that I was talking about, where they have I think they've been through 3 different channel letters, 3 different signage, and we'll be replacing those veneers and installing new bronze plate letters. And that's what I have, if you have any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Simmons? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now need to conduct a public hearing to amend the St. Thomas PSO. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this amendment, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll now consider on first reading ordinance 20-OZ39.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll now move into rezoning property along Christie Knob Way. This is planning. Mr. Blomley.
Believe that.
Gresham Lane.
Gresham Lane property is the next item on the agenda.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I checked the wrong item here. Rezoning approximately 1.23 acres located along Gresham Lane west of Agri Park Drive. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Mayor McFarland, and good evening, Mayor and members of council. Our next public hearing tonight is for property located along the east side of Gresham Lane. It's actually adjacent to the mulch company, which is located off of Agri Park Drive. The mulch company needs some additional room to expand for storage of their mulch. So they have looked at property located to the west of their existing facility. It's one parcel that fronts on Gresham Lane. They're only looking to rezone the back half of it so that the frontage along Gresham Lane, this segment of Gresham Lane is predominantly residential in nature. And so this rezoning will keep that residential frontage along Gresham Lane and will proposes to rezone the back portion to commercial highway so that Mr. Emmanuel, the owner of the mulch company, can expand his operations onto this property. The property is currently vacant and would serve as a natural extension of Mr. Emmanuel's property. The Murfreesboro 2035 plan recommends neighborhood commercial development for this property. I think that we are in the process of looking to reevaluating Gresham Lane. At this point, I think we feel that the vision for this section of Gresham Lane, our department's vision is more residential in nature, but the back portion would be more associated with the development along Agri Park Drive, and as I mentioned, keep that residential character along Gresham Lane. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on October the 7th and recommended approval. Mr. Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering is here representing Mr. Emmanuel. If you have any questions for him or myself before or after the public hearing.
Any questions for Mr. Blomley? All right. We'll need to conduct a public hearing on this rezoning of approximately 1.23 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning, please come to the podium. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider on first reading ordinance 20-OZ39.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Round, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Now we will consider rezoning property along Christie Knob Way. Mr. Plumley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Subject property is located east of Shelbyville Pike along Christie Knob Way, which is a roadway that was constructed with the Walmart Supercenter located along Joe B. Jackson and Shelbyville Pike. It's the area in navy blue on the map before you. It's all one parcel. They're proposing to leave two commercial out parcels. You see there's kind of two squares here. Property's currently zoned commercial highway, and they would leave those areas zoned commercial highway. They're proposing to rezone the blue area to PRD, Planned Residential District, for a 68-unit townhome development. That blue area is about 12.5 acres, so bringing the density to 5.6 dwelling units per acre. Property, as I mentioned, is currently zoned commercial highway, and it's the applicant's contention, and the planning department certainly sees the logic in this, that the grade change on the property does not lend itself well to commercial development. There's about, from the topography crests in the center of the development, and about the first 500 or 600 feet of the development, there's about a 50-foot rise on the property. It goes from about 698 feet above sea level to 748, and then it slopes back down again towards the north. That is their reason for wanting to rezone it for residential development instead of the existing commercial development is because the topography they've indicated makes commercial development difficult on the property. The Murfreesboro 2035 plan does show this property as a general commercial land use character. In addition to the topography, it is a very deep, it's about 1,200 feet deep So the size of the site, or the dimensions of the site, 500 feet wide by about 1,200 feet deep, and the topography would pose some challenges for commercial development on the property. I won't get into any of the details of the development itself, as Mr. Mulchin has a presentation. Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on this matter on October the 7th and recommended the approval of this request. I'll be happy to answer any questions now, and if you don't have any questions for me now, I'll be happy to invite Mr. Mulchin up to the podium.
Any questions for Mr. Blomley? All right, Mr. Mulchin.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, members of council, Rob Mulchin, SEC. On behalf of Celebration Homes tonight, I'm accompanied tonight by Mr. John Hardy and Parks Group as well. I'll give you a brief presentation on the townhomes. As Matthew talked about, you can see the site there outlined in pink and white. It's just off to the east side of 231, south of Joe B. Jackson intersection, and is relatively right behind the Joe B. Jackson Walmart over there. 12.5 acres on that side. As Matthew talked about, this is a very steep property, very conducive more for residential than a commercial element on that side, so that's why we're bringing forth the townhomes tonight on that side. Zoning, as Matthew talked about, this is Zone CH. We will be leaving the two front out parcels of CH and asking for this to be rezoned to PRD. To the north, you can see we are commercial properties, which are PCD for the Walmart, and then there's some townhomes to the north, which are RM16. To the east and south, you have unincorporated portions of the county, and to the west, you have all commercial highway along 231. Just give you a couple of views. This is looking from the center of the site back to the west towards 231 to start giving you some perspective in regards to the grade change on the property. This is about middle of the property looking back down to 231. And this is an inverse looking from Christie Knob Way at the end of Tiger Hill, looking back up, so you can kind of see the very steep rise in the property, which is not very conducive for a commercial type development on this, and much more conducive for residential to be integrated into the site. And this is a view looking from the same vantage point back down Tiger Hill back to 231, where you see the signalized intersection that we have at Tiger Hill and 231 on that side. The project itself requests PRD. That's about 68 dwelling units. They're all townhomes on that side, so you're looking at about 5.41 dwelling units per acre. It'll be all underground utilities. We're looking at roughly a little more than 40% open space to be accompanied with this project. There'll be sidewalks throughout. There'll be plenty of open space. There'll be visitor parking areas spread throughout the development, as you can see on the plan itself. That way it's convenient for everyone in regards to walkability, but also on that side. During the Planning Commission, Councilman Martin asked for a sidewalk connection between the end of our development at Christie Knob Way, where our main entrance is, at the end of Tiger Hill, in regards to walkability factoring back to Walmart from a shopping experience on that side. Speaking to our clients, they were grateful to have that question asked, and they are going to be willing to install a sidewalk along Christie Knob Way from our entrance at Tiger Hill all the way back to the existing sidewalk that's along Christie Knob at the Walmart property. So I'll be crossing the out parcel and the Delk property next door to get back there for walkability back to the shopping experience at Walmart for our residents on that side. This will be sold as an HPR, or horizontal property regime. We are very walkable communities. I talked about sidewalks along all streets on that side. It's be owned and it's be maintained by a third-party HOA. We'll be providing buffers pretty much along almost all peripheries of this. I'll get into that a little further later on the presentation on that side. And these will be all private streets owned and maintained by the HOA. And then talking about the townhomes themselves, will be very well high-quality materials: brick, stone, fiber cement board. These will be two-story homes, minimum 1,700 square feet. And I'll have a mixture of 1- and 2-car garages. Give some views of the townhomes themselves so you can see high-quality materials, lots of architectural finishes on that side, lots of different variations in the faces of the building itself in regards to creating a very good presence along the streetscape. And then you can see the differentiations between the 1- and 2-car garages on that side. Decorative garage doors, carriage-style doors, lots of ornamentation on the architecture, a very high-quality product. And this is another view of another sample of the exterior finishing on the structure itself. As you can see, this is the back side of the units themselves, lots of articulation, lots of windows for a lot of lighting internally to the townhomes, even the internal units that don't have any lighting from the sides as the side units do along the edges on that side. Again, the side of the units themselves got the architectural penetrations of the extra pieces with the architectural roof shingles coming out on that side. And go back to that, the side elevations, they will also have, if they are hardy board, they will have a brick base or water table to them to create a good accent along the base of the units. Kind of some of our amenity package, we'll be going through the amenities. This is our main entrance feature at the end of Tiger Hill at Christie Knob Way. We'll be incorporating a sign for the development on that side. We'll use the same masonry type materials that we used on the structures themselves, landscaped and lighted as well on that side. Moving internally to the site, pretty much in the middle of the set, we have a formal kind of green space in the middle. We'll be providing a pavilion and some benches and such for the residents to get out, walk around, gather, have conversations on that side. And that'll be accompanied by a playground structure in that area as well. So parents can bring their kids out and they can have a communal activity area on that side so the kids can play and the parents can talk and have an enjoyable evening or daytime experience on that side. Going back to the plan, we'll also be incorporating, aside from all the sidewalks along the streets, we'll be incorporating a walking trail to kind of link some of the other green spaces we have inside here. You can see denoted in the red line here. And of course, if you look down on Christie Knob Way, we incorporated, give you a little signalization and showing where we're going to incorporate that sidewalk along Christie Knob Way, leading back to the existing sidewalk on the Walmart property for walkability. And also be incorporating a dog park. We've kind of got the dog park situated on the southern end of the property, kind of a little bit further away from the main amenity where you have kids and such playing, so that people want to get their pets out, they can let them get out and walk around, enjoy themselves, do some activities on that side, and being kind of a little bit more separated from the development, but still linked via the sidewalks and walking trails for the residents. Access, we talked about, our main access point will be on Christie Knob Way, which is at the end of Tiger Hill, which leads directly back to, as I spoke about earlier, the signalization at Tiger Hill and 231 on that side, so that's our main location on that side. We'll also have a potential stub there in the south. You can see the circle in the middle of the diagram there. That is a stub street to the property in the south for connectivity later on if that property should develop at that point in time. And then to the right of that, you have another circle there. That's a potential another connection to the south on that side, but that needs to be studied relative to grading once we get to the site plan level development on the property on that side. Buffering, as I spoke about earlier, like I said, most of this property is buffered in some form or fashion, whether it's a type A buffer, as you see on the north and western boundaries, in regards to that being a type A buffer. And then as you see along the south and eastern portions of the property, we'll be incorporating a type D buffer. So that's our second most stringent buffer along those properties that are in the unincorporated sections of the county on that side. So that's a 15-foot wide, double layered evergreen massing along that periphery on that side to help buffer ourselves between us and the county residents. I appreciate your time and commitment in regards to this project tonight, and I'm looking forward to any questions now or after public hearing.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Molishon? All right, seeing none, we need to consider, we need to have a public hearing for this rezoning request on 12.56 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll now consider on first reading ordinance 20 OZ40.
I ask a quick question. Normally in our packets, it may be for you, Matthew, we have the notes from the Planning Commission. Did anybody come and speak at the Planning Commission level? We don't have our notes from Planning Commission.
Yeah, the minutes, I apologize, the minutes were not ready, and they weren't even in a form yet that I could give you a draft.
Okay. Do you remember if anybody? So, okay, good enough. All right, I'll move for approval.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you. All right, we'll now consider approximately 1 acre located along Gresham Lane south of John Rice Boulevard.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our final public hearing tonight on a land use matter is for property located along the east side of Gresham Lane. One thing before I get started, I want to point out, my apologies for this, there was an error and we inadvertently included the wrong pattern book in the agenda materials. I have laid out the correct pattern book at all of your stations. There are some very subtle changes, but what the applicant is proposing is actually in the hard copy pattern book as opposed to what is on the website. I'll be happy to go over any discrepancies between those two, but I wanted to point that out. The property, as I mentioned, is located along the east side of Gresham Lane. It's actually surrounded on 3 sides by the county agri-park property, which is zoned PCD. It borders portions of the agri-park that have not been developed yet, but are zoned for the agri-park master plan. Directly across the street from the subject property is a single-family residence, as well as the Honda overflow lot. That Honda overflow lot is actually located in the unincorporated county, but as you can see on the map in front of us, it's quite a large parking lot for the Honda dealership. Property is currently zoned commercial local, but it's developed with a single-family residence. Single-family residences are permitted by right in the commercial local zone, so that single-family residence is a legal conforming use. The applicants are requesting to rezone the property to PCD, Planned Commercial District. Mr. Mark Levinsky with Secure Lawn wishes to locate his business onto this property, and what he proposes, and you can see in the pattern book, is he proposes to convert the existing home into an office and construct a parking lot, and then also construct a warehouse building behind the existing home. The warehouse building would be used to house his company's work vehicles, as well as some miscellaneous materials. Storage would all be located inside that building, and there would be no outside storage. There is one existing storage building on the property that would be used until the new storage building is constructed. The Murfreesboro 2035 future land use map recommends that this property develop as suburban residential. And the suburban residential use, I think, is more in line with the current use, but it's not in line even with the current zoning, which is commercial local, which would allow for a variety of commercial uses. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on October the 7th and recommended its approval to council. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Clyde Roundtree, representing Mr. Levinsky, has a brief presentation that he would like to give you.
I have a quick question. Where are we on our review of design guidelines?
Mr. McKnight,
Mayor, Council, the review of the design guidelines. Ms. Margaret Ann Green will be starting to look at that. We're currently working on updating the future land use map at current right now, and is probably the pressing opportunity for us right now. And then the design guidelines will follow once we are able to present the updated future land use map to the council.
Mr. Roundtree.
Mayor, council members, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about Secure Lawn. I am here with Mr. Mark Levinsky. He's available if you have any questions specifically for him. Matthew did a great job kind of opening up the dialogue about this particular project. I have a few slides, a real brief presentation. So the first slide obviously is just the zoning. So Matthew already kind of walked through that, but I do want to show you the second slide, which talks about some of the adjacent relationships and kind of the character of the site. This is a little bit of an island on Agri-Park's property. It's surrounded by really heavy vegetation. So Mr. Levinsky has every intention of keeping that vegetation there. You really have a hard time even knowing that there's a house there unless you're looking directly on it from the road. And as Matthew mentioned, the bottom left corner picture is a picture of the existing home. Mr. Levinsky's going to put energy into that, make it more of a commercial building. Primarily the changes he's going to do on the building are to paint the front of the building, add a porch. We'll paint the building altogether, but add a porch, add shutters, and just make it look more commercial versus residential. As Matthew mentioned, there is an existing storage building. That's the bottom center picture. That will remain until he builds the larger building behind the existing home. Currently, it has a gravel driveway. That'll be upgraded to a dustless surface, asphalt or concrete, something like that. The next picture is from Gresham Lane on the top left corner. That's the house from the road. So it sits back quite a ways. We would like to kind of enhance that along the road. That was one of the staff comments, that they wanted to see a little bit more street appeal from the overall development. So we're going to work on that. And then on the center picture on the bottom is basically the character of houses in the neighborhood across the street. So it has a little bit of a more of a rural feeling, especially since it's surrounded by so much vast property. We would like to say that Mr. Levinsky has a really good relationship with AgriPark. They were supportive of his desire to move this into a commercial building. He does a lot of consulting with them, and they have a little bit of a joint relationship in terms of what he does in terms of a business and what they do as far as AgriPark and an extension of University of Tennessee. So with that in mind, the site plan overall, we are adding additional 6 spaces of parking as well as handicap parking. We are going to basically, as I mentioned, we're going to pave the driveway. On the front, there's a split rail fence we're going to add that will kind of give it a little bit more character from Gresham Lane. And the large brown square on the back is the future warehouse building. And as Matthew mentioned, that'll primarily house trucks that Mr. Levitsky has, as well as additional items. He doesn't have a lot of chemical storage on site. That was one of the questions that folks had was, what does he actually store? Very little chemical is stored on this particular piece of property. He just wanted to make sure we knew that. And as it's mentioned, the building, the bottom square there, that's orange, that is the existing storage building that will be relocated in the future off-site. There is an existing septic field we have to respect, so it'll be served by septic. And beyond that, pretty straightforward. As far as landscaping, because he's in the landscape business and he's basically in the lawn care business and lawn spraying, but he wants to have a real showplace as far as landscaping. And in this particular case, it is serving as our formal open space, which is exciting because it really is not a dog park and it's not a fire pit and all the things we typically do. This is really more of a passive garden area that'll be kind of a neat setting, and it'll be a benefit to the employees as well as the patrons of the company. And so it was a different kind of approach in terms of formal open space. So we're excited about that. And with that in mind, I'm available for any questions you may have. And as I mentioned, Mr. Levitsky's here if you have any questions for him. But thank you for hearing our presentation, and I'm available for any questions either now or after the public hearing. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Roundtree?
I have a question. In the picture of the proposed building, the garage, it shows a 4-bay door. Are the 4 bays facing that driveway, or how is that facing?
They would be facing the rear of the house.
Is there enough room to pull out of that garage bay and onto it doesn't look to be that big of a gap between the house and that building.
It's not really designed to be service doors like you traditionally. There will probably be service. Let's put it this way: the building's not designed yet, but there will be service doors more than likely on the driveway side, and then that may just be more for an open air kind of environment versus actually having trucks going in and out along that side of the building. Great question, though.
All right, seeing no other questions, we're going to hold a public hearing for this rezoning request. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll now consider on first reading ordinance 20-OZ41.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. I don't know if you got that. The second was from the very quiet Kurt Wade over there.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Just making sure that Ms. Brown heard it. She's a little ways away. All right, so we have on first reading ordinance 20-OZ43, and this is for Planning Commission and Water Resources Board compensation.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. I'm here as well as Mr. Gore to present this item. You voted on the compensation for the Water Resources Board and recommended that we review the compensation for the Planning Commission as well. Mr. Tucker has drafted an ordinance that would make the compensation for both boards by resolution, which is a little bit less cumbersome, only doesn't have to go through 2 readings like an ordinance does. So this is 2 parts. The first is the ordinance, which would allow the compensation of both boards to be set by resolution by council, and then the second part is the actual resolution, which would go into effect upon the effective date of the ordinance, which would increase the Water Resources Board's compensation to $300 per month and the Planning Commission's to $400 per month. The reason for the Planning Commission being a little bit higher is because they routinely meet twice a month instead of one time a month. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Gore is here if you have any questions for him.
Any questions on ordinance 20 OZ 43? We need to consider that on first reading first.
There are none. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second.
Strong second.
Wrong second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Abstain.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now need to consider resolution 20R26.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll now move to Planning Commission recommendations. Mr. Plumley, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. We have 2 public hearings to schedule. We would recommend December the 17th. It will really be our only option for setting these public hearings before the holidays. That will give us just enough time to advertise. So just 2 for December the 17th.
Which ones, do you remember which ones those are?
It's for Kings Landing Villas PRD, which is located right next to Northborough Court on Thompson Lane.
Okay.
And the rezoning of the Yori property at the corner of New Salem Highway and Warrior Drive to CH.
Okay.
Move we approve these public hearing dates, or the public hearing date.
Which date?
December the
17th.
17th.
17th. Can I ask a quick question? Are we gonna likely workshop on the 9th?
Yeah, I think we are. We will.
We typically don't meet that week of the 17th, the week before Christmas, and the week, we usually just meet once in December, and I'm not trying to get out of this, but, you know, everyone has company Christmas things going on Thursday nights. Is this something that could go until January, or do you think that's going to be an issue? I just hate to have a public hearing so close to Christmas when we never will have good attendance at public hearings when you're asking for people to come during the holidays.
We knew the 24th would be off the table.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good call.
And then the 31st.
We thought the 17th might be early enough to hold them, but certainly the will of the council.
I'll defer to the council. We typically don't have public hearings that late in December, but clearly the 24th won't work, and then the next Thursday, the 31st, I can't imagine that would work either. But
They come before planning. Have they been before planning?
Yes, they've both been before Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended approval of both items.
Was there anybody to speak at the public hearing?
I believe at the public hearing for Kings Landing Villas, a representative of Northborough Court actually spoke in favor of it because they're working on addressing some of working towards addressing some of the drainage concerns in the Northborough Court development. Other than that, I think it was, I don't believe anybody spoke at the New Salem Highway public hearing, and I believe, I'm looking towards Mr. McKnight, that the one neighbor of Northborough Court was the only one who spoke at Kings Landing Villas. He's nodding in the affirmative.
Can we do it as fast as the 3rd, or is that there's some time frame we gotta wait?
Publication.
It's a public notice on
The 17th is the absolute earliest that we can do it based upon our notification requirements.
I mean, that works if, because I mean, if we didn't have anyone speak, then that's fine with me.
I'm good.
All right. Do we have a motion?
We did.
Second.
This is for December 17th at 6 o'clock. All right.
Seconded it.
Second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Plumley.
Thank you.
All right, we have Resolution 20R25, and this is amendment to the fiscal year 21 budget for the Murfreesboro City Schools general purpose and extended school funds. Welcome to your first city council meeting.
Good evening. How are y'all?
Now, we need you to drop down for 20 push-ups. That's what it is. Just kidding.
Hazing for the first council meeting. It's policy for us to bring these amendments to y'all. We've received additional donations and grant funding. So to increase our expenditures, we're required to bring them before the school board and then subsequently to the council for approval. So,
Perfect.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Just go on record, it won't always be that easy. All right. All right, we'll move on motion. We have roof repair and paver replacement for the Chamber of Commerce, and hoping that for all that's holy in this world, that this will never come back to us again. Mr. Whitaker.
Mayor, I'm not sure I can promise that, but I'll do my best. We have a slight leak and have continued that leak for some 11 years at the Chamber building. Unfortunately, when it was built, they used a roofing system that was not compatible with the pavers. We have tried diligently to repair it over the years, but unfortunately, it's time to replace it. The actual contract to replace that will be with the Chamber. But Mr. Latour asked me if I would come and ask the council to consider paying a portion of that. If we do, our portion will be $43,749. One of the reasons this is so expensive is the pavers have to be removed, the roof material taken up, replaced, and then the pavers have to be put back down. If you've ever been up there and see the outside dining area, they're about 80 pounds a piece, these pavers are, so it's quite expensive to get them removed and replaced. We will be working with and actually overseeing the work for the Chamber on this, even though the contract would not be with the city. And we had a structural engineer to come in and look at the roof to assure that we put the correct one down this time.
We own the building, correct?
We do. We own the building. They have a lease. I think it's a 25-year lease on the building. The actual lease talks about that they are responsible for repairs, but staff did not feel that this, in all fairness, is a repair. This was faulty installation back when it was originally done.
And it's leaked ever since it's...
It has.
Yeah.
Day one.
And it's
Move for
time
approval.
to repair it.
Got a motion for approval.
Sorry, I thought you were done, Gary. Apologize.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you.
We need to conduct a public hearing for a certificate of compliance for a retail liquor store for Samir A. Patel at 3210 Memorial Boulevard.
So this is for Borough Liquors located at 3210 Memorial. They've applied for ownership change to add a co-owner. State law requires retail liquor stores to have a public hearing regarding the application and a retail liquor certificate of compliance. Staff recommends approval of the application upon completion of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. All right, we need to hold a public hearing for Samir Patel certificate of compliance. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll consider for passage this certificate of compliance.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris,
Aye.
Mr. LaLance,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Aye.
Mr. Wade,
Aye.
Mr. Wright,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move to item 18, the Warrior Drive widening. This is a professional services agreement. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Staff requested a design contract for the Warrior Drive widening at the intersection with New Salem Highway from SEC, and they provided that and recommend doing those services in the amount of $113,000. The improvements of the intersection is ahead of a significant increase in development in the area, and future improvements of connected roads is outlined in the 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan. The primary funding source for the project will come from the 2021 bond issue, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Griffith?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. All right, we'll now consider new golf carts for Old Fort Golf Club. Trey, I think this is your first time coming before the City Council, isn't it?
It is. This is my first time here.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I'm coming to ask for a couple of items. First is that we approve the contract to purchase the new golf cart fleet for Old Fort through the purchasing cooperative Omnia Partners. This would also include the software license agreement for those new carts. And I'd like to point out that this is something that we already have with our current fleet, so this is just an extension of that for the 4 years that we anticipate having these carts. Also, with the recommendation from Golf Commission, we're looking to increase golf cart rental fees by $1 for 9 holes and $2 for 18-hole cart rentals. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
I've got a few, and thank you very much for taking my calls a couple of weeks ago. You guys have looked at leasing. Do you remember what the comparison for leasing a cart for 4 years instead of buying new carts every 4 years was?
Yeah, so we did look at that. The benefit to leasing is the initial upfront cost. You don't have to purchase the fleet, and we have a fleet to trade. But after 4 years, which is what the typical lease would be, we would not have any equity in carts because it would be, there's nothing to trade in. So every 4 years, we'll be kind of fighting the same battle of hoping to, or having to increase pricing to pay for carts.
Yeah, thank you. And the second question was, you had said that there was another bidder or another group looking that we could buy them from or trade them, but there was an old bid, and you were going to look at getting that updated. Did you get that updated?
So yes, there are 3 main manufacturers of carts. We're looking at Club Car, E-Z-GO, and Yamaha are the other 2 main ones. The pricing that we received from E-Z-GO for a similar cart after trade was about $4,300 a cart. The ones that we're looking at with Club Car are $3,150 a cart roughly. So
thank you.
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Mr. Adams, I have one question, and anyone who's here will, since you're the first time you're here, anyone here will appreciate that's been here for a while. One, is your tie a clip-on tie?
no, it is not.
Okay, so that's what Mr. Wilkins always came with, a clip-on tie. And is your shirt short sleeve underneath
It
there?
is not short sleeve, no.
You've already got Tracy beat. So we would always make fun that Tracy would come with a clip-on tie and a short sleeve Oxford shirt. So we appreciate you, Trey. Make sure and let Tracy know that we asked that question. So, all right, we have an agreement for computer replacement program from IT. Mr. Lilly.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. 5 years ago, the IT department started a PC replacement plan to replace old and outdated computers. This has minimized productivity issues with our employees while maximizing cybersecurity. The IT department recommends the approval of the funds to purchase replacement PC equipment for fiscal year 21. The cost to replace our outdated equipment is $70,000, which has been budgeted in the fiscal year 21 CIP budget.
Any questions for Mr. Lilly?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Lilly.
Hey, can I have it?
Sure.
Mr. Lilly, just a quick question for you. Said just something that came up today on email. Do we have, just while I got you, do we have an email address within the city that we can send emails to check if they are like phishing attempts or something like that by any chance? And is that something that you might?
Yes, you can send them to support@murfreesborotn.gov.
Support. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now consider a contract for roof repairs to Patterson Community Center.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Patterson opened in August of 2003. Since then, the roof has begun to show significant deterioration, causing water damage throughout the building. Before you this evening is a contract with Garland DBS Inc. For repairs totaling $78,920. These repairs will reinstate the remainder of the roof warranty through 2033. Funds are allocated in the CIP. I'm requesting you approve this contract. Bo Jones is here if you have any questions regarding the technical aspects of the work to be completed.
I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is this will this address the front entrance area to the building? Yep.
One of the main issues.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown. Sorry.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
You've been
Aye.
calling this right all night.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll now consider the amendment to agreement for construction of North Murfreesboro Greenway improvements.
Thank you, Mayor. The North Murfreesboro Greenway is a section of trail that's 1.37 miles long between Walter Hill Park and Central Valley Road. It was opened in December 2016. The section of trail was federally funded and constructed by the Corps of Engineers. The city's in a long-term $0 lease with the Corps of Engineers to maintain this section of trail and make it part of the Murfreesboro Greenway system. Recently, thanks to the support of former Congressman Bart Gordon and Senator Lamar Alexander, additional funding was authorized to complete the extension of the North Murfreesboro Greenway. That will be approximately 2 miles. Before you this evening is an agreement with the Corps of Engineers to amend the original agreement and acknowledge the receipt of the additional federal funding and assurance that the city of Murfreesboro will maintain the trail upon completion. This addition will be greatly appreciated by the people who use it, as it's one of our most popular sections of trails and will be a tremendous asset to the Greenway system. And my request is that you approve this amendment, and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Brown.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we now have the Patterson Indoor Pool Plaster Replacement Agreement.
Thank you again, Mayor. The Patterson pool is in need of replastering. We've got significant staining, cracking, and just general wear from usage of the pool. We received 5 competitive bids to make the repairs, and Mid-America Pool Renovation submitted the lowest qualified bid at $71,700. We've also included 2 add alternates. One is the replacement of tiled racing lines and wall targets, and the second is the usage of reinforced commercial plaster, which will allow us to get a longer lifespan out of this plaster. Funds for this project are allocated in the CIP, and I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I'll make the motion, we approve it.
Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
All right, we now have the request for approval to purchase the automated waste management solution, and this is solid waste. Mr. Core.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. What
what we're asking for tonight is for your approval to purchase a hardware and software system for our solid waste fleet. The vendor is Routeware. We took a request for proposals back in January for this, so we've been working on this for almost a year. And we had a workshop at your workshop in August. We talked about some return on investment and how the efficiencies gained with this system will pay for itself. But before I get too much into it, I just wanted to show you kind of our cart count. We've been keeping track of the trend of our solid waste carts since July of 19. So this is about a 16-month snapshot. We've got 45,529 carts that we pick up each week. The trend as far as new services, we've gotten about 1,541 new services. We've had people purchase an additional 548 carts beyond the 1,500, so we're just over 2,000. And our commercial customers, we have lost about 1,354 carts of opting out for commercial. So you can see we were above 45,000 in July of 19, and we're now above that 45,000 mark here. Had that little dip. So what is the automated waste management solution? Basically, it's a GPS fleet tracking tool. What does that allow us to do? We can basically, drivers, dispatchers, supervisors can check for missed stops, deviations in routes, create helper routes, and just make sure that trucks are on schedule and that all trucks are operating at the same level of service. Really, and also the AWMS equips trucks with onboard cameras and computers that have real-time linkage to a control center. What that does is that allows people to, the drivers to record when they're done, if they've skipped, if there's a reason for a skip, if there's a constraint on the route that they were unable to pick up anything. It also gives us the GPS time stamp of when a driver was at a certain location and can verify service. So all of these things gain efficiencies and allow us to operate smoother and more effectively and save money from go-backs. So the cost of this software and hardware, it's a 5-year contract totaling $510,000. Year one would be just under $175,000. That was approved as part of the CIP. I think it was for $200,000 at that August workshop. Maybe that was the October workshop. Anyway, so that's the 5-year term. We do believe it's going to be about an $8,600 a month cost. We do think we're going to ultimately save about $10,000 a month. So that's where we see that return on investment paying off. So that's a real quick summary, but I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Yeah, just to clarify, what you showed all of us at our workshop, how much it costs for us to go back, and then what we spend on a monthly basis doing that. So will you clarify again how much you feel like we'll be able to save?
Right. So if we miss about 200. We have about 250 go-backs. So if you look at that, about $40 per go-back. So that's 250 misses per month. And if those go-backs cost us $40 each, that's about a $10,000 savings. So we just have to avoid about 250 go-backs each month, and that effectively pays for itself. The $8,600 cost per month, and if we save $10,000, we're $1,400 in the black.
Now, on top of that, I think it's amazing that we have we pick up roughly 45,000 a week. So we're picking up 180,000 cans or tubs per month, and we only miss 250.
Right. We're just trying to pick up that 250.
Yeah.
Right. And this does offer the opportunity too, if we ever do want to charge for extras. I know we're not there yet, but it does have that camera system, and there is the ability, if there is a very large amount of brush and limb that someone is putting on the curbside that really is beyond the normal, if we do decide we want to charge an extra for that, this does give us the opportunity to go that route if we want to.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Gore?
For approval.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Short.
you very much.
All right, we have 3 beer permits. Ms. Brown, are all these in order?
Yes, they are. There's a new location for a nightclub bar at 620 Northwest Broad Street, an ownership change for a convenience store located at 1660 Middle Tennessee Boulevard, Suite H. And the last one is an ownership and name change for an entertainment venue at 123 Southeast Broad Street. All of the applicants have met the requirements for a beer permit, and staff recommends approval pending their final building and codes inspections.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown?
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we have no board and commission appointments. Any statements that need to be, Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Are you on board and commission appointments, or?
Oh, no, payment of statements.
All right, all right, now we'll move to payment of statements.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I emailed you earlier today regarding the payment of a statement related to the Farrer litigation, and this is for legal fees incurred by Bradley Ehrenbold Cummings in representing the city in that litigation, seeking your approval to pay $11,368.25, and to have that, while run through the general fund, actually be paid from Water Resources Fund.
Any questions?
I'll move for approval.
Motion and a second.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. All right, any other business? All right, on behalf of the entire city council, we want to wish everyone a blessed and great Thanksgiving. So spend time with your loved ones, and we will see you. I guess our next meeting will be first week of December, correct?
3rd, yes.
Yep, all right, we'll see you December 3rd. We stand adjourned.